So we try to understand the data, looking at the soil moisture in different soil, so fields or other crop or types. And we have different data based on the crops and soil types in the US. So that's where we want the most agriculture, the farmers are stressed. So the data we want to see is that the variety of different states and crop types.
Right, thank you so much. Our next presentation will come to us from David Sloane of Irrigronomy, and David is going to be telling us about putting soil sensors underneath row crops. So, David, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Where am I supposed to stand to be on camera? Just back?
Just a little bit back, and let's see if this works. Yep, you can use the clicker.
Okay. Yeah, so my name is David Sloane. I'm here under my guise as an independent consultant, but full disclosure, I am also the chief agronomist for Grow Guru, and Grow Guru is the manufacturer of this technology that I'm about to show you. But I'm also somebody that's been using capacitance soil moisture sensors for 30 years. I've helped introduce it and grow the market in Australia and also in row cropping in the US. And so I've spent a lot of time, I'm now living in St. Louis, have been since 2009, but been building out the market and introducing the technology to farmers right across the Western Corn Belt, but really it's the Ogallala footprint. So Northern Texas, Western Kansas, Eastern Colorado, and pretty much all of Nebraska. And so what I wanted to do is just have a look. When I heard, I'm a newbie here, I'm coming from the ag world, not the monitoring world. So as in sensor networks, mesonets, but there is a massive overlap. And also I've got a lot of experience in using capacitance sensors that may be useful for some of you guys. But really what we're talking about, the industry has evolved and still the state of the art today pretty much is you plant a crop, you put sensors in, you monitor it through the season, then you pull them out and you harvest the crop. So that takes a lot of work. If you think about the state of Nebraska, there is a lot of corn planted within a 4-week window, and there is no possible way you could go and put sensors in all the fields in that 4-week window to kind of keep up with when the crop's planted. So that's a barrier, and so there's just not enough people to get the equipment out. And so a lot of people look at a change that we've made and they go, oh wow, we've got scalability. But what I want to show you, the true scalability from my point of view, is actually in the data. So when you put a sensor in, a capacitance probe, they measure a very, very small part of the soil. It's what's right up against the probe. So installation is critical. And if you've got an army of people out there installing, you get a really variable result. So you have to kind of take that into account, that variability. And you've also got some bedding in issues and other things. And quite frankly, you just need to collect the right data to ground the sensors. So what we did, and incidentally, the person that developed this technology, Jeff Campbell, no relation to the weather stations, he also was the inventor of the hydroprobe, the Stevens hydroprobe, that some of you are familiar with. So he built this wireless transmission system that we can transmit data from under the soil. So now we can bury a probe and leave it in there. And so we started this in 2019, and we've got probably 1,000 probes out there over the last 5 or 6 years where even all the early ones still working, going gangbusters. We built it to last 5 years. We've done 6 and we're heading into our 7th year. And we think we're going to get probably 7 or 8 years of battery life, reading the probe every 30 minutes and transmitting it from below ground. So what that means is that we can put the probes in at the end of the season. And so when labor is available, and so you get that scalability, and everything we put in now, we don't have to reinstall for 7 or 8 years. So now we're truly scalable. And what we can then do is when the transmitter, so it's a near field communication system. So we've still got stuff in the field, but what we can do is take that away, roll over the top with a combine or a planter, and then stand the telemetry back up again. And when the telemetry is out of the field, we're still logging. We've got 6 weeks of logging capability under the ground. So It's a truly revolutionary technology. And everyone, as I said, looks at this and goes, oh, wow, now I can put out, 30 times more sensors. But what I do is I look at it and go, I can now use modeling where I couldn't use modeling before. So let's look at how we use sensors. So the way, as I said, you get a lot of variability with soil moisture sensors. And so to put a probe in the ground and say, hey, that's 32% volumetric soil moisture, that's risky. Don't do it. Because you might be plus or minus 5% just based on the installation. But the relative change matters. And so you can look at the relative change over time based on that installation, and that's a true measure. And what we do is we simply don't even worry about the scale. We'll look at the plant drinking. So you look at the day-night stair stepping, and if the stair stepping is increasing, there's more water going through the plant. If it's decreasing, there's less water going through the plant. And of course, this is just a summary graph that we can look at each individual level in the soil, so we can see how deep water is going, we can see how deep roots are growing, we get all that information. But if we just focus on what's going on here, the plant's telling us that it's drinking. And so we want to watch, it's the heartbeat of the crop. And so this is the key thing with irrigation scheduling, is that we want to get to understand that. But if we now pan out and we look at what happens at the start of the season, as the plant starts to grow, bearing in mind we've got the probe is in prior to planting, we can now start to see the start of that stair step. Hey, the crop's growing. Now those stair steps get bigger, the crop's getting bigger, it's going deeper in the soil, taking more moisture out, so we can watch it grow. And so it's the relative size of the stair stepping that we can measure. And so what we want to do is track that through the season. This happens to be deficit irrigated corn. And so two things are happening. One is the roots are going deeper. We're accessing more moisture. And the other thing is the overall trend is going backwards. So we're actually taking moisture out of the soil. Each time we replenish it, we're not replenishing it back to full. But those first few cycles, so let's think about this. This is a permanent probe data set, but if we were going with a seasonal probe data set, that's my field of vision, right? I planted the crop, I've had to get it established, then I put my probe in, then what I'm trying to do early in the season is go, oh, where's my full point? So I can look at that and say, how much can I get back in the soil? And so I'm pretty comfortable that I know where full is. And so everything is taken, that's my reference, my baseline. And then I use an allowable deficit. So I can say, okay, I think I can get so much water out of the soil, and I can schedule my irrigations that way. But what happens if you're wrong? What happens if we leave that probe in, we go, oh, actually, that wasn't my full point. Now I've got a bigger frame of reference. We've heard ChatGPT referenced so many times this morning. Well, the strength of the model is really fed on the amount of data that you've got to train it. And so if we're looking at a small amount of data, we don't have that data to train the model. So by leaving it in, we've now got more data. We've got a bigger frame of reference. And it's like, oh, I thought I was full. But in actual fact, the probe was put in a little late. The crop is now, instead of putting it in at V2, it's now gone in V3, V4, or even, V6. So the crop's knee high and it's taken moisture out. And I've already gone backwards a little bit. So by increasing my frame of reference, I get more confidence. And now, as I said, we've had these in for 6 years, coming into our 7th season. So we can now look at this and really verify our frame of reference. So this is an empirical model now, where I'm not trying to calculate and tell the model what to do. I'm watching what the data says and just reacting to that. And so this happens to be a corn-cotton rotation. And, the old agronomist in me wants to tell you all about the fact that corn doesn't take as much water out of the ground as cotton and so on. But really what we've got is a really, really long frame of reference to actually measure how much water a cotton crop can take out versus a corn crop. And we can see the seasonal differences that, hey, we got a nice warm finish. The cotton took a lot of water out of the ground. The reason that we developed this, by the way, is because farmers didn't want to know in Northern Texas Panhandle how much water I've got in the season. They just turn on and they run. They want to know how much water I've got out of season, because they finish dry and they want to get it wet again. And so they actually asked us to develop this technology so they could measure from harvest through to planting and get ready for planting again, not just what happens in the season, because they're not making the decision then, they're making the decision to try and get from where it's dry back to full again. So this is really, through observation, we're calibrating a gas tank. I can say, okay, I'm coming into the next corn crop. This is how big my gas tank is. I don't have to put numbers on it. I can just now say, I know where full is 100%, and I know where empty is because I know that's what the crop can get out. And I can tell you how full I am, relatively speaking. And so that's what we do. You can see on the very right-hand side there, we've got a colored irrigation template. So now I can go through and put in the next year's crop, and I've got a roadmap to follow as an irrigator. But that's, I guess, not why we're here. What I wanted to do is just show you that by having a large frame of reference, if I went back and gave you the state of the art right now and said, okay, those little cutout boxes, that's what we've got. That's what the whole industry's been operating on. It's not enough info. If I had to try and work out my full point every season, it's going to be variable. It's going to be totally variable. And so on farm, I'm always guessing. I'm always playing catch up, and that's been a struggle with soil moisture sensors, certainly in an irrigation scheduling sense. And so you had to be a real expert to be able to work around this. You couldn't get a model to come in and say, I know exactly what's going on, because the model might be really good. It might be really robust, but if you haven't given it the right data to train it, how are you going to have confidence in it? And so I've worked for a couple of different companies. Before I was with Grow Guru, I was with Aquaspire. We used to compete with a company called Crop Metrics, which got bought by CropX. I mean, the whole industry out there, which is, you might have heard some of these names, and we all use pretty much the same probes, whether it's Centec or AquaCheck or, CropX. There's lots of different probes out there, but they all are limited until now by the fact that you're having to guess and then relearn it. And then at the end of the season, trash that and relearn it again. So you had to be a consultant or an expert to be able to work with this. And so it's kind of limited the penetration. But by going back to the full data set and having an unbroken data set, by not pulling the probe out of the ground, I can have this beautiful, beautiful data set for machine learning. And so that's what I wanted to expose you to. This is it's a commercial technology. And so we operate as a hardware as a service. It's not really geared for the world that you live in, but I just wanted to explain that it's out there, and we're making further changes. But what it also is enabling us to do is move into the rain-fed market. And as we do that, there is going to be a network of sensors already out there, paid for by the farmers, which maybe you'll be able to lean on. If you get the farmer's permission, here is another data point. And so, well, not one, thousands of data points spread across the entire Oglala aquifer footprint. So really, that's what I wanted to bring to you. And the other thing is, I'm really happy to have a conversation about how to install equipment, bearing in mind that I'm always about capacitance probes, like a probe style sensor, put thousands of them in, had to deal with all those issues of where to place them and all of that, what installation technique to use. And so, I'm happy to have a conversation if you want to bail me up, later today or tomorrow. And one last thing, I'm so passionate about sharing information and teaching people. We've actually started a non-profit called the Master Irrigator Foundation to teach irrigators how to use this equipment to become better irrigators. It's grown out of a program that started in the Panhandle of Texas that I've been involved with over the last 10 years. And so, that's something that we're trying to do to really build the knowledge base amongst irrigators, and I guess by extension, any farmer. With the permanent probes, we're getting into a lot more soil health and regenerative practices and that sort of thing. So thank you.
Any questions? I'll ask one. So how many of these sensors are you putting in per farmstead or field?
Yeah, so the question, how many sensors do we put in per field? It's always a beautiful one. It's per decision, right? So think of it as how many decisions do I need to make? So if I'm splitting my field and I'm treating one half differently than the other, which is really common in northern Texas because they don't have enough water, they'll plant half corn, half cotton, something like that, then I'm going to need two. But if I have one crop, I'll generally just use one. Think of it like a thermostat is to an air conditioner. If I've got this building, this room might only have one thermostat because it's one air conditioner, even though it's a big space. You go into another room and it's got its own air conditioner, it needs its own thermostat to control it. And where you put that thermostat makes a big difference. If you have it too high and the hot air rises, it's going to make you feel cold. If you have it too low, it's going to make you feel hot, so on and so forth. So you've got to pick where you place it to get best effect.
Thanks, and then, got a couple more.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Hey, thanks. Interesting. I wonder, is that to be below the depth of any field operations? So, what is that depth typically that is buried, and what's the maximum that it could be?
Yeah, so two questions, great questions. What is the depth that we bury it and how deep could it be? Take the second one first. It could be 10 feet down. It goes through soil and water. I mean, we tested this at the bottom of the deep end of a swimming pool under 10 feet of water. It's not a radio wave, it's a magnetic pulse system. So depth is not an issue. How deep do we put it under the soil? Yes, we've got to get below till depth. So it works really well in a no-till situation where you can have it with 4 inches of clear space. The first sensor is 2 inches down from the top of the probes. That would put the first measurement at 6 inches. A lot of people, very typically, were having the first measurement point at about 8 to 12 inches, somewhere in that range, just because of farming practices. And everyone says, oh, but the roots are all in the top foot. I challenge farmers to break the paradigm, and they all want to measure where they think they should be. You've got to be measuring where you need to be. And it's forcing deep roots. If you took off the top 2 sensors on a Centec probe and you took off the 2 inch and the 6 inch and just had your first sensor down 10 inches, you'll become a better farmer. Because most irrigators see the 2 inch sensor jump, they go, oh, wow, I've done such a great job. No, you haven't. It's only in the top 2 inches. You've got to get water down 12, 14, 16, 20 inches to be effective. And that's what we've learned in the Texas Panhandle. We've doubled irrigation efficiency by looking where the water needs to be, not where they're used to having it. Yeah.
All right, any other questions? Okay, thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.